whether our president should remain. And they are taking open comment. Will you be making comment to
I actually made questions. A few days ago on the blog, I did 10 questions for the Blue Committee, and a bunch of readers of the blog posed some more questions, and I'm going to be posting those in a few days. It's my hope, and I think that we have to be realistic in terms of what we've seen from the administration. We've not seen a lot of transparency. We haven't seen a lot of willingness to sort of reflect on what was done. It's my hope that the Blue Committee, in its investigation, takes into account the lacrosse case. And the comparison I'll make is to Nightrong on the campaign trail. Last October, Nightrong said, you shouldn't judge me on the basis of how I've handled the lacrosse case, because we'll never see a case like this again in our lives. And of course, that's true. But the lacrosse case revealed things about Nightrong in terms of his ethics, in terms of his leadership style that are very troubling. And I think that the lacrosse case certainly has to be viewed as part of the president's record in terms of his leadership style, in terms of the decisions that he has and has not made. And I think the president's in a difficult position. There was this wonderful Kristen Butler column a couple of weeks ago in the Chronicle, which basically said that the president better hope that he's not judged by the same standards he judged Coach Pressler by, because then he's going to be in trouble. It's my hope that the Blue Committee, I can't say, what the decision of the committee would be. I don't have access to it. It would be presumptuous, and I don't have access to the information. But what I hope that they do, and I think it will be a whitewash really if they don't, is that they look hard at the lacrosse case as part of the broader pattern of presidential behavior. And Brodhead has done fairly well in terms of fundraising. That's an important aspect as well. But it would be, I think, of deep concern if the case were treated as somehow an exceptional one that deserves no scrutiny, or if the argument is made that the president performed well because he always stood up for due process, which is just a record that doesn't comport to what we saw in the facts. But as is often the case with these sorts of review committees, it's good that they're welcoming public input. It is very difficult to determine how such committees actually work behind closed doors, and so I guess we'll have to wait and see in terms of the final product.
Could you just say a little bit about your decision to start the blog, Durham and Wonderland, and about what caused you to get involved?
When this case began, I had no connection to the Duke lacrosse team. To be quite honest, I didn't know Duke had a lacrosse team. My sister played college basketball at Columbia, so I was not unfamiliar with college athletics, but this wasn't a connection that I had. I saw the group of 88's ad. I do not routinely read websites. The ad was posted on the African American Studies Program website for several months after it appeared. I saw the ad only because of the Chronicle. The Chronicle doesn't put its ads on the web, but it was mentioned in a Chronicle column by Stephen Miller in a Chronicle editorial. And I was looking at the Chronicle just because I wanted to see what was going on in the case. It seemed like an odd case, especially after the DNA evidence came back negative. And so then I looked at the ad, and the ad just struck me as so unbelievably improper for faculty members. I teach a course in the history of American higher education. I cannot think of another example in the history of American higher education where we've seen this kind of ad in this sort of context. So that was how I became, interested. I decided to actively blog about the case a couple of weeks later because of two events on May 1st. The first was this Coleman Committee report, because up until that time, again, I didn't know anyone who was on the lacrosse team. I assumed that the character had to be correct, that these guys were all, just sort of racist thugs, and no one would want to defend them. And so, but I read the report. I figured I had to read the report, and what it said was, well, they drink too much. I hadn't realized that Duke had suddenly become the Liberty University of the Triangle, where students' underage drinking was viewed as a great moral offense. But it was clear to me as a professor that the caricature was just entirely wrong. And then what is to me, one of the 2 or 3 signature moments of the case, that same evening, the news on all 3 of the Triangle's stations, 11 o'clock news, led with an item from Kirk Osborne's motion, and that was the image of Reed Seligman at the ATM machine when he was allegedly committing a crime a mile and a half away. And I very naively figured, well, this is an absolute torpedo. There's no way in the world that Naiphong could be elected the next day, because who could possibly vote for a man who has knowingly indicted an innocent person? I've learned a lot more about Durham politics since then. But those two events, it became clear to me that there was something really wrong here. And I'm a historian of Congress. I deal with procedure. I'm very comfortable with procedure. My academic career has been about procedure. And to see a case where procedure was so routinely violated, and where so few people seemed to care, was just disturbing to me on a professional level.